Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into the misty green shadows of ancient Mesoamerica. Somewhere between howler monkey hollers and flickering torchlight, your stomach is not exactly behaving. You're trudging through soft dirt roads in a humid Mayan village, clutching your side and trying not to look too concerned. The locals, meanwhile, seem utterly unbothered. They're wearing embroidered cotton tunics, calmly chewing bits of chicle sap, and casting side eyes at the horizon where Venus, yes, the planet, has just twinkled into view. Apparently, this could be the source of your trouble. Venus isn't just a bright dot in the sky here, it's a divine body, a timekeeper, and a bit of a meddler when it comes to mortal bowels. Something about its current cycle has villagers whispering that someone's stomach was going to turn. Guess who? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious who's tuning in from across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're led gently by the wrist, no sudden movements here, toward a thatched roof healing hut nestled beside a large ceiba tree. The roots twist like sleeping snakes. A low drumbeat thuds somewhere in the distance. And the smell of copal incense lingers in the air, blending with something vaguely medicinal, like mint, lime peel, and possibly fermented honey. You crouch at the entrance, peering into the gloom. Inside, a flickering fire casts golden light over low stone stools, baskets of dried herbs, and an altar covered in maize kernels and polished shells. The healer isn't quite what you expected. He's barefoot, wearing layered jade necklaces and an expression that says, "Venus is definitely up to something." He waves you in with an obsidian-bladed tool that you hope isn't meant for your belly. You shuffle forward anyway, feet brushing over woven mats patterned with constellations. You're seated. He studies your face, your wrists, and finally presses 2 fingers to your pulse, then looks skyward. It's not you he's diagnosing, it's Venus. The healer mumbles something in Yucatec Mayan. You catch a word that might mean butterfly or intestinal wind. Neither sound comforting. You try to explain that you may have eaten too many fried tamales from a cheerful vendor with a suspiciously large parrot. But the healer frowns and glances at a thin obsidian disc propped near the altar. It's not a mirror. It's a reflector, a ritual tool for catching the night sky's truth. Venus is rising, low and pale over the horizon. It gleams like a drop of melted silver, and everyone in the hut suddenly pauses. The healer sighs. Someone murmurs, "Ah, Kukulkan's breath again." Apparently, that's not great news. In Mayan cosmology, Venus is often considered both healer and bringer of calamity. Its cycles are watched carefully, not just by astronomers, but by priests, farmers, and, yes, doctors. Or whatever we'd call these ancient medical sages with their bone flutes and planetary diagnosis charts. Historians still argue whether Venus was more feared than honored, its visibility linked to droughts, disease, or even bad dreams. But here, tonight, it's definitely being blamed for your gurgling stomach. The healer begins to hum, a long, low sound that feels like it's tuned to your spine. Another assistant, barely more than a teen, lays down a steaming bundle of herbs on your lap. You think you recognize chamomile. Or maybe crushed iguana tail. Hard to say in this lighting. The treatment begins. He circles your body, holding a bundle of burning sage and tapping your forehead lightly with a stick covered in carved Venus glyphs. A woman outside begins to sing, softly and slowly. Like she's coaxing a cloud to sleep. The tempo of the night slows. The oddest part is, you start to feel better. Or maybe just more willing to surrender. Because if you're going to be ill in the jungle, it might as well be in a candlelit room that smells like toasted cacao and divine mysteries. The healer speaks again. He says something about your stomach being out of alignment with the morning star's path. You nod. Sure. That makes sense. You catch sight of a faded mural on the hut wall, Venus as a serpent descending from the sky, its tail coiled around a calendar wheel. Below it, a group of humans crouch with swirly lines painted on their bellies. Apparently, you're not the first. And the more you sit there, the more your surroundings begin to hum with layered meaning. Every object in this room, from the obsidian shard to the shell rattle hanging from the door, seems carefully chosen, calibrated for cosmic balance. You're not just being treated for indigestion. You're being recalibrated according to Venus' 584-day cycle. There's a soft pop from the fire. The healer nods to himself as if confirming a suspicion. It is the third phase, he says. You raise an eyebrow. He pats your shoulder. It's not the worst one. Outside, a breeze sways the leaves of the ceiba tree. The stars shimmer a little more clearly now, and for a second, you wonder whether your stomach ache was ever about food at all. Maybe it really was something in the stars. The healer gestures for you to lie back, on what looks like a mat of woven palm fronds, softened with something that smells faintly of cinnamon and old rain. Your head sinks into a rolled-up jaguar pelt cushion, and your view narrows to a sliver of thatched ceiling swaying gently in the torchlight. Somewhere outside, frogs begin their nighttime chorus. The elder settles beside you, eyes squinting up at the open ceiling hatch, where Venus still hovers like a quiet overseer. He begins to speak softly, almost like telling a bedtime story to a particularly nervous patient. You're not sure whether he's trying to distract you or educate you, but either way, you let the sound of his voice trickle in like warm honey. He explains that among the Maya, the movements of Venus were no accident. Priests spent generations charting the planet's every rise and disappearance. This wasn't casual stargazing. This was serious, backbreaking math, carved into bark paper and scratched into stone. The stars were a calendar, a diagnosis chart, and, occasionally, a warning label. You shift a little as he explains how each appearance of Venus, its heliacal rise, its descent into invisibility, marked key moments in the agricultural and spiritual year. If Venus rose at dawn, it might mean illness, famine, or war. If it vanished too soon, someone important might die. And if you happen to get stomach cramps during its dangerous days, well, don't say nobody warned you. Historians still argue whether the Maya were more astronomers or astrologers. But in this dim hut, where healing means aligning your breath with planetary patterns, the distinction feels kind of irrelevant. The elder reaches behind him and pulls out a battered codex, its folded pages dark with smudges and soot. He opens to a page that seems almost comically complex, tiny glyphs arranged in symmetrical columns, peppered with dots, lines, and serpentine spirals. Venus table, he says, tapping a symbol that resembles a four-petaled flower with a tail. You squint at it. It's pretty, sure, but also looks a bit like a beetle wearing a headdress. He chuckles. You're in the second cycle, he murmurs, when the body's fire turns against itself. You're not sure what that means, but it doesn't sound ideal. He then recounts the tale of the Maya priests, many of whom doubled as astronomers. Their training began early, memorizing positions of stars with nothing more than obsidian sighting tubes and handmade gnomons. Some worked from high temple platforms, charting the skies in chalk and soot by torchlight. Others wandered deep into the jungle, watching how shadows slid across stone altars. You try to imagine it, being one of those sky watchers, lying on your back for hours, waiting for a faint shimmer of Venus to rise just above the canopy, signaling everything from planting corn to whether or not a toothache would worsen. And here's the twist: these priests didn't just observe Venus. They listened to it. Not in a literal sound wave kind of way, but through patterns. Venus always moved with eerie regularity, 263 days as a morning star, 50 days hidden in the sun's glow, 263 days as an evening star, and then 8 more days of invisibility. The cycle repeated like clockwork, and with it came predictions. One of the quirks, the elder says with a grin, is that they believed Venus could send hot winds into the body, upsetting the liver, inflaming the belly, and even causing nightmares about teeth falling out. You blink. Wait, did you not just dream that last night? He shrugs, like this sort of planetary meddling is just part of the terrain. Still lying back, you catch sight of a woven mobile dangling above you, small orbs shaped like celestial bodies, slowly spinning from threads. Venus glows slightly brighter than the rest, carved from white shell and painted with swirling lines. One of them, the moon, probably, has googly eyes painted on. A quiet joke from the apprentice, maybe, the elder continues, Venus's influence wasn't random. Each of its phases corresponded with a shift in how the Maya interpreted human wellness. Morning appearances were considered aggressive. That's when Venus was at its most dangerous, blamed for stomach troubles, headaches, and outbreaks of confusion. Evening appearances, though, were more peaceful. That's when rituals for healing were most effective, and guess what? Your stomach chose the wrong part of the cycle to start complaining. To balance things out, your treatment tonight isn't just about herbs or massage. It's about realigning your inner winds with the phase of Venus. You resist the urge to giggle, somehow it feels wildly impolite. The elder leans closer and drops his voice. Venus does not like to be ignored. Apparently, once, long ago, a nobleman scheduled a major wedding ceremony during one of Venus' shadow days. According to the story, the wedding feast turned to ash. A storm blew through the temple, and the bride's dress was eaten by a family of unusually large frogs. The marriage, it goes without saying, did not last. No one wants a frog dress. You can't help but smile at the absurdity, and at how deeply interwoven celestial mechanics were with daily choices, when to eat, when to travel, even when to schedule a haircut. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot a young girl crouching in the doorway, watching curiously. She's holding a tiny bundle wrapped in banana leaves. The elder motions her forward. She unwraps the bundle carefully to reveal a mixture of crushed herbs and what might be ground obsidian. A little overkill for a stomach ache, perhaps, but the Maya were never ones to skimp on drama. He tells you that tonight's treatment is timed to the minute of Venus's appearance, not a moment before. Timing is everything. You lie there, staring up at the mobile again. Venus spins slowly above you, glowing brighter now in the real sky as well, and somewhere in that rising light, your stomach gives a soft, contented grumble. Progress? The firelight in the hut flickers as the elder reaches behind a low wooden shelf and retrieves a bowl carved from calabash. Inside is a thick, pale paste that smells like roasted seeds, wet stone, and a hint of citrus, if citrus had been invented for making poultices rather than cocktails. He stirs it slowly with his finger, muttering something that might be a blessing, or possibly just a recipe. Hard to say. The girl with the banana leaf bundle watches silently as he dips a wooden spoon into the paste and smears a small dollop across your bare stomach. It's cool at first, then tingles slightly, as if the plants inside it are waking up. He explains that this is balch root, a mild ferment often used in rituals, and sometimes in after-work happy hours. When you're not on Venus duty, apparently, this root was thought to open the body's listening pathways, making it easier for the healer to hear what your insides were trying to say. You didn't know your stomach had a language of its own, but in this world, even indigestion speaks in glyphs and moon phases. He leans in closer, tapping your sternum gently. This is where the fire lives, he says, and fire must obey the stars. You nod sagely, as though this makes perfect sense, and try not to laugh when your stomach gives another theatrical gurgle. The healer smiles, then launches into a tale, one you suspect he's told 100 times before, but that he clearly enjoys telling again. He recounts the day the stars refused to move, a legendary event when Venus stalled in the sky for a few nights, disrupting every healer's routine and sending villagers into a panic. Chickens reportedly stopped laying eggs. A baker's apprentice swore his bread had a hole in the center shaped exactly like the planet. Historians still argue whether this myth refers to a rare astronomical conjunction or just an unusually cloudy week, but the story stuck. For the Maya, the cosmos wasn't an abstract canvas, it was a neighbor with moods, grudges, and impeccable timing. The girl returns with a jug of thick, amber liquid. It smells faintly of fermented honey and crushed bark. The elder lifts your head gently and offers you a sip. Only a little, he warns, or you'll dream too vividly. You take a cautious gulp. It's sweet, earthy, and alarmingly fizzy, like mead that forgot it was supposed to age. Within seconds, your stomach feels floatier, somehow. Less like it's plotting a rebellion. Balch wasn't just a medicine. It was a medium. Priests and healers used it during ceremonies to deepen trance states, to commune with Venus and other celestial beings. Some even claimed they could see the planet speaking, sending slow, glittering threads down to Earth. Whether those visions came from the sky or the alcohol content is, admittedly, still debated. As the night stretches on, the elder points to the fire, where a ring of stones is arranged in a spiral. Each stone represents a phase of Venus. A carved jade disc in the center marks 0 day, the moment when Venus disappears entirely. That, he says, is when the world holds its breath. He explains that this period of Venus's invisibility, its passage behind the sun, was viewed with deep suspicion. It was a time of liminality, when rules loosened, spirits wandered, and stomachs, yes, those again, became restless with confusion. People were discouraged from traveling, planting, or starting anything new during these days. The healer's voice grows softer, more rhythmic, as if aligning itself with the planet's measured cycle. He tells you that your symptoms, gastric turbulence, bloating, maybe a weird craving for roasted squash, coincide perfectly with the tail end of Venus's evening star phase. Meaning? You're not sick. You're cosmically inflamed. He sprinkles a small handful of maize around the spiral stones. The corn kernels bounce softly, each one catching the firelight like tiny suns. Offerings, he says. So Venus sees we're paying attention. You find yourself wondering what would happen if Venus didn't feel seen. Would it flick the planet like a marble? Send a meteor through your cooking hut? Or just continue to inspire a series of increasingly uncomfortable burps? The girl giggles as if she read your thoughts. Next comes the clearing. The healer takes a handful of crushed herbs, copal resin, mixed with what he calls Tibetan flour, and tosses it into the fire. Smoke curls upward in slow, silky ribbons. It smells sweet and bitter at once, like sugar burned in an incense shop. The smoke fills the room, thickening around your shoulders, your eyelids. Everything starts to feel muffled. He begins to chant, but softly. The rhythm is lulling, like wind rustling through banana trees or rain pattering on a clay roof. Each syllable seems to match your heartbeat. The smoke dances, and you watch as it drifts toward the ceiling, brushing against the stars beyond. It's during this part that you start to slip, not into sleep exactly, but into something softer. A state where the stars blur, where time forgets its shoes, and where your stomach stops trying to explain itself in Morse code. You hear the healer mention a place called Xibalba, the Maya underworld, but not in a scary way. He says it's where illness travels when it leaves the body. It's also where planets like Venus go when they're hidden. Everything has a place. Even your cramps. The fire pops softly. Outside, the frogs fall quiet. A breeze slides through the doorway, bringing with it the faint scent of wet earth and hibiscus. You're aware of your body only vaguely now, its edges smoothed, its complaints quieter, and the elder's voice, now barely a whisper, says, Venus will return. So will your balance. One more spoonful of the herbal paste is spread across your belly. A final offering. Then he stands, bones creaking like old wood, and extinguishes the flame with a cup of rainwater. Darkness returns, and with it, a silence so complete it almost hums. The stars outside the hut look closer now, as if they've tiptoed down from the heavens to check on your stomach personally. Venus, that dazzling diva of the night sky, has not yet risen again, but the healer assures you it will, eventually, and when it does, things will begin to right themselves. For now, you're led to a sleeping mat woven from palm fiber, still warm from the day's sun. You stretch out slowly, belly calm, brain drifting, as the healer places a small clay dish filled with herbs beside your head. For scent dreams, he murmurs. Apparently, even dreams need seasoning. You close your eyes, and in that half-sleep place where thoughts float like feathers, the story begins again, not the story of your stomach, but the story of how the Maya came to read the sky like a diary. Long before telescopes or phone apps with constellation filters, the Maya had something better, eyes that noticed everything. They watched Venus rise and fall with such care that over centuries, they mapped its entire cycle with uncanny accuracy, 584 days, to be exact. No calculators. Just observation, memory, and probably a lot of neck strain. You picture a scribe sitting atop a stone temple, elbow deep in papyrus bark paper, sketching out a chart that resembles a lunar calendar but with extra flair. He's grumbling to himself because the rain smudged last week's glyphs. Behind him, a bowl of crushed chili and cacao paste sits forgotten. Priorities. This scribe belongs to a school of thought that treated astronomy like poetry. They didn't just record Venus as bright object, westward. No, they gave it moods. Sometimes Venus was the jaguar star, a hunter lurking behind the sun. Other times, it was the spear of the sky, signaling war, famine, or digestive surprise. Historians still argue whether Maya astronomy was rooted more in spirituality or science, but that debate misses the point. To the Maya, the sky wasn't a separate discipline, it was daily life. What Venus did mattered because Venus was part of the family. You didn't go planting maize if your celestial cousin was in a bad mood. In fact, Venus was so important that it was assigned its own priestly specialists, Venus priests, whose entire careers revolved around tracking the planet's movements. These were not your average astrologers. These were elite, spreadsheet before spreadsheets types, constantly recording heliacal risings, elongations, and synodic intervals on long bark paper codices. One of the most famous of these codices is the Dresden Codex. It's basically a Maya almanac meets star map meets slightly cryptic instruction manual. Page after page of glyphs, numbers, and star symbols reveal not only when Venus would rise but what kind of attitude it might have that month. In one section, Venus appears beside a glyph meaning throwing spear. This meant war was favorable. In another, it's paired with black storm serpent, time to cancel your fishing trip. You wonder how much of this was metaphor, how much was prescription. If Venus said don't travel, did everyone really stay home, or did some poor soul risk it, and come down with a mysterious rash that was, predictably, blamed on the planet's disapproval? From your mat, you imagine being that person, a trader named something like Chickpack, who insisted on journeying to a neighboring town during the Venus shadow period. He probably sneezed once, stubbed his toe on a cacao root, and got his sandals stolen by a coati. Later, a priest muttered, "Should have listened to Venus," and the story became a cautionary tale passed down for generations. The healer returns, his steps soft as owl feathers. He sprinkles something powdery into the fire pit, even though the fire's out, and whispers an apology to the stars for waking them. You get the impression that here, everything is alive, even ashes. He sits beside you and begins to hum, not a song, really, but a string of tones that rise and fall like wind across a hollow reed. It's calming in that peculiar way humming always is, like the world narrowing into a single vibrating thread. Then he begins to speak again, not to you this time, but to Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity, often associated with wind, rain, and, you guessed it, celestial motion. Kukulkan, he explains, rides Venus like a chariot, spiraling through the heavens. When the planet brightens, it's because the serpent has unfurled its plumes and taken to the sky again. The myth makes you grin. Imagine trying to explain this to your high school astronomy teacher. Yes, Mrs. Thornton, Venus is technically a terrestrial planet, but it's also a winged reptile with a complicated schedule. Still, the idea holds charm. More than that, it holds pattern. In a world where so much was unpredictable, floods, famine, relatives who overstay their visit, Venus moved with poetic regularity. The Maya tracked its 5 major phases and even noted that every 8 Earth years equaled 5 Venus cycles. This harmony wasn't just pretty. It was powerful. Back in the village, the healer continues explaining that every shift in Venus's position affected different parts of the body. When it was low and dim, it irritated the cold organs, the stomach, kidneys, and lower limbs. When high and radiant, it aggravated the fire centers, the chest, liver, and spirit. You think back to your symptoms. That bloating? Classic descending Venus. The dull ache in your sides? A textbook case of planetary confusion. He laughs softly. You're just too tuned in, he says. Too sensitive to the sky. You're not sure if that's a compliment or a diagnosis, but it beats gastric funk. The girl returns again, this time with a necklace made of woven grass and what looks like obsidian beads. She drapes it gently over your chest. It's light but grounding, as if Venus itself sent a care package. The elder tells you to keep it on through the night. It tells the stars where you are, he says. In case they want to check in. You're not sure what stars would say if they visited. Probably something smug like, told you not to eat that second tamale. Still, you feel oddly comforted knowing you're part of some celestial spreadsheet. The night deepens. Your breath syncs with the rhythm of crickets outside, with the crackling of cooling coals, and perhaps, just perhaps, with the subtle spin of a planet glowing invisibly beyond the horizon. The village is still asleep, but the jungle is wide awake. You lie there on the palm fiber mat, listening. Cicadas were like distant fans left on high. A toad croaks from the edge of the path, where the rainwater has pooled into a muddy crescent. Overhead, something rustles in the trees, probably a kinkajou, or possibly just the sound of leaves gossiping, and finally, there she is. Venus rises, low on the horizon at first, then steadily brighter, as if someone has scratched a silver coin across the dark sky. The healer doesn't say anything, but he shifts, just slightly. He's noticed it too. His gaze fixes on the light, that particular gleam that has caused so much joy, panic, and rescheduling over the centuries. You sit up just enough to see it, and yep, Venus looks as smug as ever. And why wouldn't she be? According to the Maya, this was her dramatic return as the morning star, after spending time in the underworld during her invisibility phase. Always the flair for narrative, those Maya astronomers. Your host clears his throat quietly. Now she's young again, he says. But watch, she'll get ambitious. You blink. Ambitious? He nods. When Venus gets too bright, the world stirs. Blood runs faster. The stomach tries to do more than it should. It's such a Maya thing to say, but also kind of accurate. Maybe this is the planetary equivalent of too much coffee. Venus gets overexcited, and somewhere deep in your gut, your organs try to keep up, but this isn't just poetic. It's diagnostic. You see, Maya medicine wasn't just herbal tinctures and chanting. It was a whole framework. Health was viewed as a balancing act between the natural world, the celestial order, and the rhythms of the body. Everything was connected: stars, soil, steam baths, stomach bile. One of the oddest but most logical parts of the system was the belief that specific stars affected specific organs. Venus, bright and bossy, ruled the belly and liver. Mars stirred the blood. The moon? The bones and fertility. If your foot hurt, no one looked at your sandal, they looked at the sky. You're tempted to roll your eyes, but then again. How different is this from blaming Mercury retrograde for dropping your phone in the toilet? Still, not every ailment was planetary. Sometimes your humors were just out of sync. Yes, humors, as in the Maya, had their own version of those fluid theories found in medieval Europe, but with a tropical twist. Heat and cold, dryness and moisture. You had to maintain your inner climate. Too hot. Cool it down with river mint and shady rest. Too cold? Cacao. Spicy chiles, and, surprise, a bit of fermented maize liquor. The healer chuckles, clearly reading your expression. Sometimes we gave the patients pepper water just to see them sweat. Better than leeches. You make a mental note, never complain about modern medicine again. He leans over a small bowl and begins to mix something with a smooth obsidian pestle. It smells faintly of anise and ground tree bark, probably copal resin, which the Maya used for purification. He explains that this isn't a cure, exactly, it's a conversation starter, between you and the stars. You're pretty sure your stomach doesn't speak fluent constellation, but okay. He paints a small glyph on your palm using a finger dipped in the mixture. The symbol, he tells you, is for Ek, the word for star. It's meant to signal readiness to the universe, or maybe just to help you sleep. Honestly, it could be both. Close your eyes, he says softly. Let the light of Venus settle into your blood. You do. And as you drift, the healer begins to speak again, not chanting, not praying, just storytelling. He describes how Venus is woven into the Maya creation myth, the Popol Vuh. The hero twins, Xbalanque and Hunahpu, descend into the underworld and eventually rise again, one as the sun and the other, yep, as Venus. But here's the twist, depending on the version, which twin becomes Venus can vary. Historians still argue whether it's the mischievous one or the clever one. You smirk sleepily. Classic twin drama. According to the myth, Venus appears before dawn to scout the path for the sun, like a cosmic intern making sure the road is clear for the boss. And that's why Venus was both revered and feared, because nothing that goes to the underworld and comes back glowing is ever just a star. The healer's voice lowers. You see why your stomach listens. Venus has been to dark places. You nod. In this light, even your indigestion feels profound. The night stretches on. Somewhere in the village, a baby cries once and is hushed. A bird calls out from deep in the ceiba tree, startled by a breeze. And Venus climbs just a little higher. You wonder how many people, over how many centuries, have stared at this same star from hammocks, temples, and jungle huts. Traders, farmers, warriors, healers. All looking up, wondering if their symptoms matched the sky's mood. Did someone else once lie here, belly grumbling, feeling vaguely blamed by a planet? Probably. The healer finishes his tale and adjusts your blanket, a simple cotton weave embroidered with a serpent spiral. It's warm, heavier now that Venus is out. You can't tell if it's the herbs or the storytelling. But your stomach no longer feels like a protest zone. It's resigned. At peace. Possibly asleep, you let yourself melt back into the mat. The air is cooler now, the sort of cool that happens just before dawn. A kind of intermission between darkness and light. The healer stands and whispers again toward the star. You catch the words thank you and come again gentle. You close your eyes one last time for the night, wondering what Venus has planned for the morning. Hopefully just mild dreams. When you wake, the village is humming, not loudly, but with the gentle tempo of a place that's been doing the same morning routine for centuries. Chickens dart between stone steps, someone is grinding maize into dough, and the faint smell of wet earth and roasted cacao hovers in the air like an old memory. Your stomach? Quiet. Almost suspiciously well behaved. You give it a tentative prod and receive no protest. Maybe Venus accepted your apology. Or maybe it was the pepper water. The healer appears at the doorway with a new offering, a thick wooden cup of atoll, a warm, gently spiced maize drink. You sip. It's comforting. Thick enough to count as breakfast, mild enough not to offend a recently humbled digestive system. Today, he tells you, is a calculation day. You raise an eyebrow. For what? For Venus, he says, matter of fact. And war. And weddings. And planting squash, of course. Why not? You follow him to a shady spot beneath a flowering ceiba tree, the sacred tree of the Maya. whose roots dig into the underworld and whose branches brush the heavens. Nearby, young apprentices have gathered around a smooth stone slab. On it sits a codex, a rare one, hand-painted on bark paper, the glyphs precise and vibrant despite their age. You try not to breathe too hard near it. This isn't a museum piece under glass, it's a living document. This particular codex is a Venus table, one of the most astonishing features of Maya astronomy. It doesn't just note when Venus will appear, it predicts it, for hundreds of years. The Dresden Codex, the most famous of them, includes 584-day Venus cycles with such accuracy that modern astronomers have had to admit, the Maya absolutely knew their stuff. Venus has 4 main phases: morning star, invisibility, evening star, invisibility again. The Maya tracked every transition. And not just the timing, they attached meaning to each phase. Venus rising as morning star. Ominous. Time to avoid battles. Or launch them. Historians still argue whether Venus's appearance delayed wars or justified them. But either way, King scheduled violence around it like a Google Calendar alert from the gods. Your healer gestures at the codex. He points to a glyph that looks vaguely like a comb on fire. Here, he says, Venus disappears for 8 days. We call it the Death Walk. You swallow your atoll. The belief was that during this time, Venus traveled through the underworld, battling unseen forces. Its reappearance marked not just a return but a resurrection, a rebirth that reset the cosmic scorecard. You get the sense that even bad stomachs weren't immune to that kind of symbolic reboot. You ask, tentatively, whether this makes Venus a kind of god. The healer considers this. Not a god like Kukulkan or Itzamna. He says. More like a strong spirit. A messenger. A watcher. In other words, she doesn't have time for your nonsense, but she's keeping receipts. The apprentices begin drawing glyphs with charcoal on flat stones, today's calculations. They're working out the next Venus cycle using base 20 math, which is exactly as confusing as it sounds. Maya numbers were composed of dots, ones, bars, fives, and conch shells, zeros. It looks like abstract art, or perhaps a game of celestial checkers. You try to follow along and immediately get lost. But the mood is calm, focused. This isn't frantic stargazing. It's maintenance. Like tightening the strings on a harp before the song resonates, the healer picks up a small wooden board painted with planetary glyphs and smiles. It's not for you, exactly, it's for the next generation of healers. An astronomical flashcard set. You're touched. Also slightly panicked, he might be expecting you to quiz well. Instead, he holds it up to the light and begins a quiet explanation of how the Lamat glyph, associated with Venus, also stands for abundance, fertility, and maize. Which, you're now realizing, basically means Venus had a branding team. She's everywhere. On temples, on plates, in lullabies, even on the bones of the buried. One grave, he says, contained a priest buried in a sitting position, face tilted toward the rising point of Venus. His bones were dusted in cinnabar, and his belt was carved with stars. A lifetime spent whispering to the sky, you sit a little straighter, but Venus wasn't always benevolent. In fact, some days, her return was dreaded. Entire villages postponed markets and marriages, and royalty stayed indoors. It was said that when Venus rose and the moon was in a bad face, bad luck ran rampant, crops failed, lovers quarreled, stomachs turned on their owners. There's even a chilling tale of a ruler who insisted on marrying during Venus's dark phase, only for the wedding feast to be rained out. The groom to trip over his own ceremonial feather cape, and the bride to develop a sudden and suspicious rash. The marriage didn't last. Coincidence? Maybe. But it makes a better story if you blame the planet. The healer laughs when you bring this up. People like stories. And sometimes, the stars give us good ones. You lean back against the ceiba tree, the shade dappling your arms. A butterfly flits past, its wings the exact same gold as the morning light. And you can't help but admire the system, how the Maya, without telescopes or apps or even metal tools, managed to choreograph planetary cycles into their daily lives. Doctors took pulses and checked sky charts. Midwives timed births to star positions. Even the cooks glanced upward before boiling sap. Venus wasn't just a planet, it was a calendar, a character, and sometimes, a cosmic scapegoat for your tummy troubles, and it worked. Because when the world feels unpredictable, looking to the heavens gives you patterns. And patterns? Patterns are soothing. Even when they're a little bossy and bright, Venus is climbing again now, just barely visible through the slits of the palm leaves. She's still smug. But you're less irritated by it. After all, she showed up on time. She did her part. And your stomach hasn't muttered once all morning, so maybe, just maybe, you're friends now, or at least frenemies. By midday, the jungle air thickens, not just with heat, but with anticipation. A festival is approaching, and Venus, as always, is on the guest list. You've never seen a town prep for a cosmic event quite like this. It's as if everyone's getting ready for a dinner party hosted by a celestial diva. Candles are being carved, flowers tied into garlands, and an alarming number of masks with googly eyes are being painted. You drift toward the market square, pulled along by the scent of roasted chilies and crushed marigold. The healer is there too, his hands red with a natto dye. It's the feast of the fifth appearance, he tells you, gesturing toward a line of dancers practicing steps barefoot on the sun-baked ground. Venus will rise again soon. A clean start. You nod slowly, thinking to yourself that Venus seems to rise and fall more often than your motivation to eat kale. But hey, maybe that's what keeps her interesting. The dance they're practicing is old, really old. It mimics the four phases of Venus, ending with a fifth, symbolic one, the start of something new. You watch as the dancers fall in and out of step, some moves sharp like sword jabs, others smooth as a river bend. One sequence involves crouching low, almost to the ground, then springing upward with arms raised. It's not just choreography, it's allegory. An elder explains that the Maya believed Venus didn't just influence events, it reflected them. The world below was a mirror to the sky. So when Venus was reborn in the sky, so too could you be. Even if you'd had a rough week. Or a rough stomach episode involving two kinds of bitter root, the musicians start tuning their instruments, drums, flutes, and a kind of rattle that sounds like rain tapping on clay. One guy is playing a turtle shell, which is exactly the kind of percussion choice you expect in a civilization that charted the stars and worshipped amphibians. A young boy runs by, giggling, holding what appears to be a Venus effigy made of dough. His mother snatches it back before he can bite into it. Apparently, eating the planet before its official rising is a cosmic no-no. You file that under things I didn't expect to learn today. The healer takes you to a shaded bench and hands you a folded cloth. Inside, 3 small tamales wrapped in banana leaves, each dyed a different color, red for the morning star, black for the underworld journey, and white for rebirth. You eat them slowly, reverently, as if they might whisper astronomical secrets if chewed just right. He tells you that many Maya villages kept Venus shrines, modest altars on rooftops or hills, always facing the direction where Venus would rise. Offerings were left there, maize, cacao, and yes, stomach-calming herbs. It wasn't just spiritual, it was practical. A planet that shows up consistently can be trusted. Unlike your cousin who always forgets your birthday, you wonder aloud if the priests ever got it wrong, if they ever misread the signs or tripped over their own calculations. Of course, he chuckles. Even stars can surprise you. In fact, there's a whole category of Maya omens that dealt with unexpected appearances, a comet blazing across the sky, an eclipse that came too soon, or Venus shining too brightly. These were called kawil, or fire serpents, signs that something was about to unravel. Some historians think sudden Venus sightings were blamed for bad omens, including failed harvests or the unexpected death of a noble. Others argue that the Maya simply adjusted their rituals, treating anomalies as updates. Celestial software patches, if you will. You ask whether they blamed Venus personally for all of it. He grins. Not blame. Just noticed. The sun tilts westward, and preparations move faster. Women string flower necklaces between palm trees. A group of children practice reciting poems about Venus's long walk through the sky. One verse compares her to a jaguar leaping from cloud to cloud. Another describes her as a lonely girl looking for her lost reflection. The metaphors are rich, and frankly, a bit heartbreaking. You learn that these poems were part of oral medicine, not just entertainment, but therapy. For grief, for fear, even for bellyaches. Reciting stories about celestial beings brought comfort, structure, and, let's be honest, a pretty great distraction from earthly problems. You think back to last night, doubled over in a sweat, mumbling apologies to a planet. And here you are now, nibbling tamales and listening to sky poems. Not a bad turnaround. Still, not everyone in Maya society was on equal Venus terms. Some believed certain birthdays, according to the Tzolk'in calendar, made people more susceptible to Venus's moods. Being born on a Venus transit day? Tough luck. You might be charming, but you were also considered volatile. Great at parties, terrible in long-term farming relationships. Even rulers had Venus astrologers on staff, just to make sure they weren't inadvertently offending the planet before launching a war or planning a royal haircut. Venus had to be courted carefully, like a divine celebrity with a suspiciously long memory. You chuckle at the thought of some nervous king pacing in his jade sandals, waiting for the all-clear from his Venus astrologer before finally declaring, "Okay, we'll invade the neighbors now." But only if she's in a good mood. Evening settles slowly, soft and blue like indigo dye spilled across the sky. A hush falls over the village as people begin gathering at the central platform, eyes trained on the horizon. The dancers are ready, dressed in feathers and shells. Candles are lit. Incense curls into the air, the smell earthy and sweet. And then, you see it. Venus. Rising. Bright. Brazen. Right on cue. You don't hear applause, but you feel it. The quiet reverence of hundreds of people greeting a distant sphere of rock and gas as if it were a returning lover. You feel the goosebumps. Even the mosquitoes take a respectful pause. The healer leans close and says softly, "Now." Everything resets. And maybe he's right. Maybe it does. The moment Venus rises, it's like a circuit completes. A gentle shiver runs through the gathering, not fear, not even awe exactly, but something like recognition. As if everyone's been waiting for this light, and now that it's here, the world is briefly in tune. The dancers begin. Slow, fluid movements first, arms stretching like they're reaching towards something just beyond the stars. You stand at the edge of the crowd, lulled by the rhythm. A drumbeat pulses softly, and flutes mimic birdsong. One of the dancers wears a mask shaped like a serpent with Venus for eyes. He weaves through the others like he's winding time itself. No one speaks. Even the kids are quiet, as if Venus might lose interest and dip back below the horizon if anyone breaks the spell. Your stomach, recently the site of dramatic negotiations, feels calm. It's almost suspicious. The healer notices your slight surprise and gives a soft laugh. See? The planet listens. She's always listening. You don't have the heart to say you also took a second dose of that peppermint bark infusion earlier. As the ceremony unfolds, you begin to realize just how intertwined daily life was with celestial patterns in Maya culture. This isn't just theater. These performances are recalibrations, fine-tuning human life to match cosmic rhythms. Every 584 days, Venus completes her cycle, from morning star to disappearance, and then to evening star. The Maya charted this with a meticulousness that would make your high school algebra teacher weep. They aligned festivals, marriages, even market days to its phases. Some cities even delayed certain building projects to wait for a favorable Venus appearance. Try telling that to your HOA when you want an extra week to finish a fence. But Venus's schedule wasn't just about logistics. It was loaded with emotional symbolism. When she vanished from the sky, entering what we now call the inferior conjunction, the Maya believed she was journeying through the underworld. It was a time for caution, reflection, maybe even fasting. Think of it like cosmic Lent. You remember the healer mentioning this during your earlier, more gastric distress. When Venus disappears, it's not a disappearance. It's a necessary absence. A time when even celestial bodies need to retreat, reset, and return. Kind of like your brain after a full work week, but not all Venus lore was so meditative. Some versions cast her as a trickster, a planet of beauty and chaos. There's an old tale whispered during festivals about a prince who dared to court Venus herself. Depending on who tells it, she either gifted him endless wisdom or cursed him with hiccups for 100 years. Interpretations vary. You drift toward a small booth where an elder is retelling one of these stories to a circle of listeners. He uses a carved Venus disc as a prop, spinning it each time the tale takes a turn. In his version, Venus is a weaver who threads the sky with light. She slips between worlds, sowing both luck and stomachaches in her wake. Classic duality, the story ends with a proverb: the brightest light shows you the clearest path, or the sharpest thorns. You sit there a while, watching the spinning disc glint in the firelight, thinking that maybe your body wasn't malfunctioning after all. Maybe it was just syncing up with the sky. As the night deepens, another ritual begins. This one is quieter, more personal. Villagers approach a stone basin filled with water, its surface reflecting the stars. One by one, they whisper something into it, a wish, a confession, a message to Venus. Then they touch the water to their forehead. The healer encourages you to try. You kneel, peer into the basin. Your face stares back, slightly warped by the ripples, framed by constellations. Venus gleams above, like an earring fastened to the ear of the universe. You whisper something too, nothing big. Just a hope that your stomach stays calm and your path stays weird. And for good measure, you add, no more crocodile-based anything, please. As you press the water to your forehead, you catch a whiff of copal smoke, sweet, resinous, almost like burnt honey. It carries with it a memory from earlier, the bitter herbs, the strange tea, the masked dancer leaping like a comet through fog. All of it swirls together in a sleepy, fragrant haze. The healer, still somehow standing tall after hours of ceremonies, joins you again. You've seen Venus now. You're part of her story. You ask if he really believes the planet can feel gratitude, or pain, or pity. He shrugs. Can you feel the moon? You think about it. Maybe not as a sensation, but definitely as a presence. That quiet awareness when it's full and high, casting silver shadows even on a street you've walked 100 times. Maybe Venus is like that, but more chaotic. And maybe, just maybe, she likes it when people pay attention. You learn one more thing before bed. There's a tradition here called kainal kain, loosely translated as sky breath. Before sleeping, people take one long breath under the open sky, thinking of the stars, the gods, the ancestors, and the day to come. It's not a prayer exactly. More like a sky selfie with your soul. You decide to try it. One long breath. The air smells like wood smoke, warm tamales, and something else. Something electric. High up, you exhale, slowly. Venus watches. You wake to the soft rustle of palm fronds and a sound you can't quite place, half bird, half flute. It's still early, the horizon barely tinged with pink, but the village is stirring. The healer appears again. This man may never sleep, and hands you a bowl of something that looks suspiciously like porridge but smells faintly of citrus and charcoal. You poke it with a carved spoon. "Don't worry," he says, "no crocodile today. Just ground amaranth and lime ash. It's what we give after a stomach revolt." You eat, slowly. It's oddly comforting, earthy and warm, with a sour note that makes your taste buds sit up straight. Apparently, lime ash helps your body absorb niacin. Something about maize-based diets needing a chemical boost. Who knew breakfast could be a biochemical balancing act? As you finish, a group of children runs by, giggling and chasing each other with Venus-shaped kites. The tails sparkle with bits of mirrored shell, catching the morning sun. You watch one catch an updraft and spin wildly, dancing like a drunken hummingbird. Today, it turns out, is a market day timed to Venus's rise. Every fifth Venus cycle, certain highland and coastal communities gathered to trade. Salt, obsidian, cacao beans, medicinal herbs, you name it, they brought it. If Venus was shining and your satchel was full, it was time to haggle. You make your way to the open plaza where stalls are being assembled. Blankets are rolled out. Canopies stretched. Someone's already roasting something that smells suspiciously like pumpkin and pepper. You're not hungry, but your curiosity sniffs the air. At one stall, a woman arranges bundles of dried herbs into neat pyramids. The labels are hand-drawn glyphs, some simple, some intricate. She waves you over, offering a bundle tied with red thread. "This one," she says, "is for indigestion, grief, and uncooperative relatives." You chuckle, then realize she's not joking. "All three?" She nods. "Same root cause." There's a rhythm to the market, no loud calls or price shouting. Just slow, friendly bargaining. You watch a man trade a chunk of jade for 2 baskets of fermented cacao. Another woman swaps a bundle of dried Venus thistle for a scroll inked with celestial charts. No coins change hands. Value here isn't metal, it's usefulness. Or mystery. You start to piece together how this whole Venus economy works. The planet doesn't just govern the sky, it regulates the pulse of trade, diplomacy, even marriages. Some historians argue that these Venus markets were coordinated across regions, functioning as a cosmic calendar of commerce. Others insist the alignment was mostly symbolic. A nice flourish, but not binding. The debate continues, and probably always will. Still, the records are persuasive. In one codex, merchants are shown bowing to a glyph of Venus before setting out. In another, trade caravans are depicted crossing rivers with star markers in the corners. You can almost hear a royal advisor muttering, "We can't send obsidian yet. Venus won't approve." You wander past a stall selling pigment powders, ochres, crushed seashells, and something a bit too glittery to be natural. The vendor dabs some on your arm. It shimmers blue, then fades to green. "Chameleon powder," she says. "Only reacts under Venus light." You blink. That can't be true. But then, you've drunk bark tea, whispered into water, and accepted medical advice from a man wearing a jaguar cloak. Why not reactive glitter? Further down, you find a row of scrolls rolled and tied with maize husk ribbon. They're astrology forecasts, personal horoscopes calculated by Venus's cycle. One man offers to do yours. "When were you born?" he asks. You pause. Explaining the Gregorian calendar here is not worth the trouble. So you give him a vague late summer, during a thunderstorm. He nods solemnly and starts drawing a series of glyphs. "This means you are ruled by Venus's third descent." That makes you diplomatic, impatient, and prone to gastrointestinal betrayal. You laugh. "That last part is very specific." He shrugs. "Venus knows." As you leave, he hands you the scroll. It's mostly pictograms, but one symbol stands out, a spiral inside a star. "Balance," he explains. "The gut, the sky, the journey, they all spin. You take it with a strange sense of gratitude. Not because you believe in Venusian astrology, necessarily, but because it feels like someone is paying attention to your rhythms, your story, even your awkward digestive adventures. Later, you rest under the shade of a ceiba tree, sipping from a clay cup of chilled hibiscus water. Two elders nearby are deep in conversation, debating whether a recent drought was due to Venus's delayed rise or the lack of ceremonial dance in a neighboring village. It's not clear where science ends and belief begins. And maybe that's the point. As the sun rises higher, the market quiets. People pack up slowly, wrapping goods in woven cloth and exchanging parting bows. You realize that even in this mundane act of commerce, there's a quiet elegance, a recognition that trade, like health, relies on unseen rhythms. Back at the healer's hut, you sit by the fire pit, now cold. He joins you, eating from a bowl of the same porridge you had earlier. Your stomach's calmer? You nod. Good, he says. Venus has moved on. So should your insides. There's a soft smile behind his words. Not mocking, just amused at the way bodies, planets, and strangers keep intersecting. You ask him what happens when Venus is hidden. When the markets close, the rituals pause, and the light disappears. He leans back and stretches, bones cracking softly. Then we wait. Listen. Dream. Venus always returns. Just like the pain. And the laughter. And, you think, probably the hiccups too. The afternoon sun begins to lower, painting the sky with shades of burnt orange and violet. You find yourself wandering back toward the edge of the village, where a shallow river snakes quietly through reeds and moss. The air smells of damp earth, warm clay, and the faintest hint of smoke from distant cooking fires. Along the bank, a few villagers gather stones and carefully arrange them in circles, marking spaces for what you soon learn are healing rituals tied to Venus's evening appearance. You watch as they prepare clay masks and feathers, each element selected for its symbolic resonance with the goddess Venus, or Kukulkan, as some call her here. You lean in closer to hear the conversation between two older women. Their voices low and rhythmic like the flowing water. One is explaining how certain plants harvested under Venus's light hold greater potency, especially for soothing stomach ailments. The other nods, adding that the timing of medicine is as important as the medicine itself. You recall the healing ceremony you attended days earlier, when the healer mixed herbal concoctions and performed incantations timed with the planet's position. There's a precision here that blurs the line between science and magic. It's both comforting and disorienting. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly understood the chemical effects of these plants or if it was all faith, a question that echoes through centuries of ethnobotanical studies. As you observe, a young boy offers you a delicate bundle tied with a violet ribbon. Inside is a small pouch filled with ground copal resin. For breathing, he whispers shyly. You accept it and carefully inhale. The scent is earthy, sweet, and faintly citrusy, something that reminds you of pine forests you've never seen. It soothes your chest and clears your mind like a gentle breeze. Nearby, a group of musicians begins to play soft, repetitive tunes using reed flutes and rattles made from gourds. The music blends with the rustling leaves and the gentle lapping of the river. You feel your heartbeat slow, your breath deepen. It's as if the entire world has settled into the same peaceful frequency. Someone starts a quiet chant, a melodic invocation to Venus, calling on her to bring balance to bodies and spirits alike. The words are foreign, but the feeling is universal: hope, healing, and a connection to something far beyond yourself. You think about how this quiet evening ritual mirrors modern practices of mindfulness and meditation. Just without the app notifications, as night falls, lanterns flicker to life, casting a warm glow on faces painted with symbolic designs. The river reflects the stars above, and Venus shines brightly, a steady beacon in the darkening sky. You feel the pull of the cosmos in a way you never expected, like your own body is a small part of a much grander dance. The healer returns and sits beside you, pulling his cloak tighter against the cooling air. Venus teaches us about cycles, he says softly. Of pain and relief, loss and return. Your stomach ache was never just an ache. It was a message. You nod, sensing the truth in his words. Maybe your body was trying to speak in the language of planets and plants. Maybe it was reminding you to slow down, to listen. As the night deepens, the villagers begin to drift home, leaving the riverbank quiet except for the soft echo of last chants. You close your eyes, letting the sounds and scents wash over you, feeling the gentle pulse of the universe settle inside. You wake gently, sunlight filtering through woven reed blinds and the faint hum of cicadas outside. The air smells of roasted maize and morning dew, a quiet promise of another day unfolding under the watchful eye of Venus. Today, you decide to follow a different path, the role of the Mayan healer as both doctor and astronomer, a blend of earth and sky that few outsiders truly understand. You find yourself at a small stone structure on the village's edge, where a woman sits surrounded by scrolls of bark paper and piles of herbs. Her eyes sparkle with the sharpness of someone who has spent decades reading stars and deciphering human ailments. She gestures for you to sit, then begins to explain how the cycles of Venus dictate not only rituals but also medical treatments. When the planet appears as the morning star, it signals a time for cleansing and renewal. When it hides in the sun's glare, the focus shifts to rest and recovery. You realize that this cyclical thinking extends deeply into every facet of life. The healer's tools include not just dried herbs and pottery but also a carved stone calendar etched with Venus's complex movements. The glyphs seem to pulse with a rhythm all their own, like a heartbeat encoded in stone. She pulls out a bundle of leaves from the local mountain shrub, explaining that they're used to ease digestive troubles but must be gathered precisely when Venus is in its evening phase. Collecting too early or too late renders the medicine ineffective, or worse. Historians still debate whether this precision was coincidental or the result of centuries of empirical observation combined with spiritual belief. Either way, it's clear the Maya didn't just observe Venus, they lived by her cycles. The healer offers you a sip of bitter tea brewed from the leaves, with a hint of honey and smoked cinnamon bark. It tastes like history itself, earthy, smoky, and oddly sweet. You sip slowly, feeling the warmth settle deep in your stomach. There's a strange comfort in knowing your discomfort has a place in a much larger cosmic narrative. As you sit with her, she shares stories of healers past who charted Venus's course using naked eyes and polished obsidian mirrors. Some were revered as priests, others feared as sorcerers. Gender roles here were fluid, women and men alike could hold the sacred knowledge, but the societal balance was delicate. You remember the tale of Enheduanna from ancient Mesopotamia, the world's earliest known poet-priestess, who linked divine order to celestial cycles. It's fascinating how across time and space, cultures have found similar ways to connect body and sky. The healer pulls out a small wooden box filled with carved bone tools, needles, scrapers, and massage implements, all used to treat ailments believed to be caused by celestial disturbances. You try not to wince as she demonstrates a gentle scraping technique on your forearm. It helps release trapped energies, she explains with a wink. You can't decide if that's medical jargon or an invitation to relax, but either way, it works. As the day stretches on, you observe the healer balancing her dual roles, reading star charts and tending wounds, chanting prayers and preparing herbal infusions. The blend of science, art, and faith feels seamless here. You think about how modern medicine often separates these realms, losing something in the process. Maybe the Maya's holistic view held wisdom we're only beginning to appreciate. The healer smiles at you knowingly. Healing is not just fixing the body, she says softly. It is restoring harmony between you, the earth, and the stars above. You nod, feeling a quiet gratitude for the chance to glimpse this world, where a stomach ache is not merely a symptom but a signpost on a cosmic journey. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the jagged stone pyramids that pierce the sky like ancient fingers reaching for the stars. You find yourself drawn to the Grand Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, not far from the Maya lands you've been exploring, but connected in ways that whisper across time and geography. Here, amid the massive stone terraces and broad staircases, you discover evidence of a lost civilization's deep astronomical knowledge, especially their reverence for the Pleiades star cluster and the planet Venus. You imagine the builders carefully aligning the pyramid's corners to the stars, ensuring it captures the energy of the heavens. The architecture itself is a celestial map, a monument not just to power but to cosmic order. At dusk, you watch as the sky dims and Venus emerges, bright and steady above the pyramid's peak. It's almost hypnotic, like the planet is keeping silent vigil, a guardian of secrets long buried beneath centuries of dust and myth. Historians still argue whether Teotihuacan's celestial alignments were strictly religious or served as practical calendars for agriculture and ritual. The debate is far from settled, and that uncertainty adds a quiet thrill to your evening reverie. Nearby, you find a small group of locals performing a gentle ceremony, their chants soft and rhythmically weaving with the cool night air. They honor Venus as a bringer of cycles, birth, death, and renewal. You notice one elder holding a delicate feather fan, sweeping it slowly over a bowl of water. The reflections ripple and dance, mirroring the flickering starlight above. You're struck by the similarity to the Maya's own rituals, a shared language of symbols, stars, and the soft pulse of devotion. As you sit quietly, the hum of cicadas grows louder, blending with the rustle of dry leaves and distant murmurs. It's a peaceful chorus that seems to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. You recall the tale of the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device that modeled the motions of the sun, moon, and planets with astonishing precision. It's remarkable how different cultures, so far apart in time and space, grappled with the same cosmic mysteries. In a way, these civilizations were united by their gaze toward the sky, seeking meaning in the dance of planets and stars. The night deepens, and the stars become sharper, cooler points of light. Venus shines with steady brilliance, a constant in an ever-shifting cosmos. You take a slow, deep breath, feeling a gentle connection to those who built this place, those who watched this same planet, and those who passed down stories that keep ancient wisdom alive. As you prepare to leave, you glance back at the pyramid, its silhouette etched against the starlit sky, a silent testament to human curiosity and the longing to understand our place in the universe. The following morning greets you with a gentle warmth and the scent of freshly baked tortillas drifting through the air. You stroll toward a small market where brightly colored textiles flutter in the breeze, and vendors softly barter over bundles of cacao, chili peppers, and dried flowers. Here, you delve into the daily life of a Mayan healer's family, where celestial patterns intertwine with mundane routines in ways that feel both ancient and familiar. Inside a humble dwelling, you watch as a mother prepares a simple meal, timing her actions according to the position of Venus, which she refers to as the morning star mother. Her hands move with practiced ease, chopping squash and stirring a pot of maize porridge. She explains that certain foods are avoided during specific Venus phases, believed to influence digestion and temperament. For example, during Venus's disappearance behind the sun, heavier foods are shunned in favor of light, nourishing broths. Historians still debate whether these dietary customs had physiological benefits or were primarily symbolic practices designed to maintain social and cosmic order. You notice a child playing nearby, tracing the shapes of Venus glyphs drawn in the dirt with a stick, repeating a soft chant taught by the village elders. The household's rhythm is governed by the cycles of the heavens, a gentle reminder that even the most ordinary moments carry celestial significance. Later, you accompany the healer's family to a nearby cenote, a natural sinkhole filled with crystal-clear water considered sacred. Here, ritual cleansing takes place, washing away impurities and renewing the body in harmony with the stars. The water is cool and refreshing, and you feel an almost electric thrill as you submerge your hands. The quiet lapping of water against stone, the chorus of distant birds, and the faint murmur of prayers create a serene soundscape. You reflect on how water and astronomy intersect throughout Mesoamerican cultures. From the primordial waters of creation myths to practical agricultural cycles tied to rainfall and river flows, you recall earlier tales of Adam rising from the primordial waters in Egyptian mythology, a fascinating parallel, showing how water often symbolizes beginnings across cultures. the healer's family shares stories of ancestors who listened closely to Venus's messages, interpreting the planet's movements as guidance for planting, healing, and celebration. You realize that for them, the stars are not distant points of light but active participants in daily life, a cosmic conversation that never ends. As the sun climbs higher, you thank the family for their hospitality and step back into the market's lively hum, carrying with you a deepened sense of connection to people, place, and the gentle cycles that guide us all. The afternoon sun casts a warm glow over a quiet clearing where you meet a group of storytellers gathered beneath the shade of towering ceiba trees. Their voices rise and fall in gentle rhythms, weaving tales of gods, heroes, and celestial events that shaped the Mayan understanding of health and the heavens. Tonight's focus is on the myth of Mayan Venus as the twin of the sun god, a story that blends creation, conflict, and cosmic balance in a way that feels both profound and accessible. One storyteller begins describing how Venus was once a bright, youthful deity who challenged the sun for dominance in the sky, a celestial dance that caused eclipses and marked times of change on Earth. You imagine the planet's fiery glow flickering against the night sky, like a playful rival to the sun's steady light. It's easy to see why Venus captured so much attention, bright, mysterious, and unpredictable. Historians still argue whether this myth evolved from earlier Mesoamerican beliefs or was shaped by interactions with neighboring cultures, but its influence on ritual and medicine is undeniable. The storytellers explain that Venus's periodic disappearances and reappearances symbolize death and rebirth, influencing healing practices tied to cycles of illness and recovery. You picture a healer watching Venus's position, deciding the right moment to begin treatments or rituals, a patient waiting for the right cosmic signal. The narrative shifts to a quieter tale, how the twin brother of Venus became a guardian of health, watching over those who sought to restore balance between body and spirit. As the stories unfold, you feel a gentle calm settling over the clearing, the soft cadence of voices mingling with the rustling leaves and distant calls of night birds. One storyteller shares a light-hearted anecdote about a mischievous jaguar spirit who tried to steal Venus's light, only to be outwitted by clever village children. The story elicits quiet chuckles, a reminder that even myths have moments of playful humor. You think about how these narratives served as both education and entertainment, passing down knowledge while soothing restless minds, much like the stories you're listening to now. As the sun dips below the horizon, the group concludes with a blessing to Venus, thanking her for guiding the people through cycles of health and harmony. You lean back, eyes tracing the first stars appearing in the twilight, feeling the stories embed themselves softly in your mind, ready to drift with you into sleep. The night deepens, and you find yourself back beneath a velvet sky dotted with stars, the soft glow of Venus still bright and unwavering above. After days wandering through stories, rituals, and ancient wisdom, you settle into a quiet place, a gentle pause before the journey ends. You think about the delicate balance the Maya maintained between body, earth, and cosmos, a harmony that might feel elusive to us now but was once as natural as breathing. The connection between a simple stomach ache and the bright, distant Venus teaches you something profound. Health was never just about the body but about understanding your place within the grand tapestry of life and the universe. Historians still debate the exact meanings and mechanisms behind these beliefs. But perhaps the true legacy lies in the questions they inspire and the awe they evoke. You imagine the soft murmur of prayers rising into the night air, the flicker of ceremonial fires, and the steady pulse of a drum echoing through stone plazas. As your eyelids grow heavy, you feel the quiet hum of cicadas and the gentle rustle of palm fronds become a soothing lullaby. The ancient stories you've heard tonight swirl softly in your mind, blending fact and myth, science and spirit, until they settle like a gentle breeze carrying you toward rest. Remember the healer's tea, the shimmering pyramid, the playful jaguar, and the ever-watchful Venus, all companions on this slow, calming journey through time. Now, dim the lights, soften your breath, and let the rhythms of ancient skies guide you gently into sleep.